Tuesday is primary election day. That's when we will find out who will be the party nominees on the November ballot or if some races will head to a runoff. I'm Stephen Dial. Here's your Fast Four. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton issued an opinion saying his interpretation of the law finds giving a transgender child gender-affirming care is child abuse in Texas. Following that opinion, Governor Greg Abbott told the Department of Family and Protective Services to investigate cases as child abuse. His letter was also CC'd to the Texas Education Agency and others, saying they have a responsibility to report abuse. The growing tension between Russia and Ukraine will eventually impact you at the gas pump. President Biden says defending freedom will have a cost for us here at home, and he said he wanted to be honest about that. With the United States and ally countries issuing sanctions on Russia, it will raise what are already high energy and gas prices. Russia is one of the world's largest producers of oil. The Texas Attorney General is suing the city of Denton. Mask mandates by any government agency are prohibited under Governor Greg Abbott's executive order. The AG's lawsuit says the city of Denton is deliberately violating the law. City leaders say they are following scientific recommendations. Bart Beavers has been hired as Dallas's first inspector general. His office will investigate and prosecute potential ethics violations in Dallas city government. Beavers was appointed inspector general of the State Health and Human Services Commission by former Texas Governor Rick Perry. Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson says for years, City Hall has operated under a cloud of suspicion and what he calls clear-cut corruption. With the election day a couple of days away, our Sunday conversation is going to touch on multiple races. Joining us to discuss, chief politics reporter for the Austin American-Statesman, Madeline Meckelberg, and primary political correspondent for the Texas Tribune, Patrick Svitek. So if you haven't already early voted, on Tuesday you're going to see a lot of candidates, a lot of different races. Madeline, what stands out to you as what could be the closest race this primary?
For me, I think the race that poses the most chance for a super tight result has to be the Republican primary in the Attorney General's race, where you have three high-profile candidates challenging incumbent Ken Paxton. Not only are there a lot of names on the ballot, but these are three people who've held office before. People have seen their name on the ballots. So I think that definitely poses a risk of a close race.
Patrick, do you think the Republican AG's race will be the closest statewide?
Yes, I do. In terms of whether there's going to be a runoff or not, I think that one is definitely at the top of my list. One of the final polls in this race had the incumbent Ken Paxton at 43% with a group of undecided voters. And if those undecided voters are pushed in that poll, 51% is what Paxton ended up at. And so that is just 1% or 0.9999% higher than having to go to a runoff. And so that one I think can be really, really tight, as Madeline said.
We talked about the Republican primary for Attorney General. What do you think on the Democratic side? Here in North Texas, we have civil rights attorney Lee Merritt, who's running. Will this go to a runoff? Is there enough name recognition, Madeline?
I think a lot of the candidates in that race are powerhouses in their own rights, in their own communities. But the question definitely is, what is their poll statewide? I think some of the polls in that race show that there is a clear leader. I believe it's Rochelle Garza has a larger share of the vote than some of the others. But again, it's, I think, too early to say until we start seeing some of those results come in.
I definitely think that one's heading to a runoff. Like Madeline pointed out, Rochelle Garza, I think, has been the polling leader, but certainly not leading enough to win this outright. I think it's a question of whether she's going to face Lee Merritt or Joe Jaworski in that runoff. Lee Merritt is backed by Bernie Sanders and obviously has a national profile due to his civil rights work. But Joe Jaworski has been a pretty strong fundraiser, at least by the standards of this particular primary. And he's also been campaigning for a very long time.
And Patrick, what race are we not talking about as much that maybe should get a little bit more coverage?
I think there are a number of fascinating congressional primaries. Obviously, we all know about Laredo Democrat Henry Cuellar's primary, where he's being challenged again in the primary by Jessica Cisneros, who came within a few points of beating him last time. And obviously, his race took on new significance in January when the FBI raided his home in Laredo. So that's one that a lot of us know about. There are also some Republican congressional primaries that may not be getting as much attention. You have in North Texas, you have Congressman Van Taylor facing a group of 4 primary challengers who are all basically attacking him as not sufficiently supportive of former President Trump because he voted for a bipartisan commission to investigate the January 6th attack on the Capitol.
Let's transition to the race for governor. On the Democratic side, Madeline, is Beto going to be the nominee?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine a different outcome at this point. I think some of the latest polling from the Texas Politics Project at UT showed Beto have O'Rourke with 92% of support among verified Democratic primary voters. So I think he's feeling very comfortable going into election night.
And Patrick, on the Republican side, early on, many thought maybe an Allen West or Huffines would give Governor Abbott a run for his money. Will it go to a runoff on Tuesday?
I think that's unlikely, but I think that Abbott is going to be watching his vote share above 50% very closely. I think he wants a really decisive win. Governor Abbott, for most of his political career, has lived a relatively charmed life, hasn't had to deal with a lot of pushback from inside his party. The past 2 years have totally changed that.
The mail-in ballot changes with the new law. When the dust settles, will this be talked about after Tuesday, or is it just something that the media was talking about leading up to Election Day?
I think this is definitely an issue that we're going to continue to hear about. This was the very first election, and it's clear that there were a lot of issues with this process, whether that was a lack of communication, a lack of resources or training for elections officials. So I think going into November, the Secretary of State's office has to be feeling the public pressure to make the things go more smoothly next time around.
If you did not early vote, make sure to make your voice heard at the polls on Tuesday. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next Sunday for another edition of The Politics of Texas.